All right, Mary Ann, will you take the roll, please?
Mr. Vincent?
Here.
Mr. Ruska?
Here.
Dr. King? Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Welch?
Here.
Mr. Cindy?
Here. We are now moving to a public hearing portion of our agenda for the 2011 tax levy. Kevin, you want to talk about it?
This is the levy that you saw on November 8th and the committee of the whole in November. We will be levying 3%. Tim, do you want to add any more to that?
No, I mean, as I think it's been brought up, the public hearings being held just as a measure of transparency for the community. It wasn't necessary because it was under 5%. But, and this was advertised in the newspaper as was required.
And just so there's a correction on in your board packet, it's for inside Cook County it's 30 days, outside of Cook County it's 20 days. So there was a typo, and we exceeded 30 days with no issue.
Okay, given that, because we're in a public hearing, does anybody want to comment on our tax levy for 2011? And we'll go to this side first. Seeing none, go to this side. Okay, seeing none, then we're going to close the public hearing and move on to the regular agenda items. So our next thing for discussion and information is FOIA request.
None at this time?
Okay, then the monthly budget reports.
You had the financial report in your packet. Obviously, November was a very good month for us. The property taxes were due November 1st. Our revenue for the month, $7,177,000. We've received a little over $10 million in total tax revenue. That's 44% or it's 86% rather, of our budgeted fall collections. So our fund balances are up significantly. We're up to just over $12 million. And of course, this is money that has to carry us until next March when we receive the second payments on the property taxes. I did highlight a couple of the different items that we received during the month in terms of revenue. I mentioned that on the self-insurance, the number is much lower than what you've been seeing over the past few months, and that was because the deposits and the payments were made in November, but that wasn't keyed into the system until December, so you'll see that next month as it comes through. It'll probably be doubled up for the month. And other than that, on the expenditure side, our expenditures are $1,852,000. For the year, we're at a little under $9 million, about 30% of budget. We're about 42% of the year through the fiscal year, so we're actually, from a budget standpoint, we're running very well. Next month, we'll see a jump because we make our payments on the bonds that were due December 1st.
Any questions for Tim? You have anything else? I'm sorry.
One of the things I wanted to pass out, there's been some questions with regard to budget control. These are some reports. This is an example of several reports that we have. We run reports on every department and their budgets each month, give them to the department heads. This is just a sample of 4 different departments. The total report is a little over 100 pages. So obviously I didn't want to run the whole thing for you. But this gives you an idea of what I'm looking at every month for each department, what the department heads are looking at. As we said before, there's a couple of examples in here where they've gone over budget on certain line items, but they're under budget on other line items. Overall, they're under budget. And this is basically what we use as a tool in the business office. It's also used by the department heads, who I think also have a certain responsibility, obviously, to maintain their spending within their budgets. But I wanted to give you this as an example of really how we monitor and try to control the expenditures each month. And again, the total report's over 100 pages long, so I just copied a couple of different core departments and a couple of different athletic budgets.
Go ahead.
What about the revenues? If you look at the last one, budget, football, we were told that they're allowed to include their revenues in determining whether they're exceeding the budget.
I'm sorry, say it again.
We only show, according to the title of this report, it says expenditures. But for some areas, there's revenues, and football happens to be one of them. And it's not listed on there, so how do you, we were told before that there, you know, look at the revenues and expenses and don't exceed the total, the net of that.
Well, I think we're looking at the expenditure reports to make sure that they don't exceed the budgeted dollars. You know,
So they don't get to consider any revenues when they're determining whether they're exceeding the
No.
budget? Oh, okay.
Any other questions for Tim?
I have two questions. The first one is on the handwritten page
What page?
4 on the bottom, the handwritten number 4. And it is, about the middle of the page, it's the textbook rental and sale. The line starts with 1811.
Okay.
It just seems odd to me. It looks like maybe we made a purchase of the books, but then when I go across, the lines don't add up at all.
Well, the
see that?
textbook rentals is, yeah, we collect all of the fees at the beginning of the year because we're collecting so much money in such a short period of time. We're putting all of the money into that account.
Right, okay.
And some of that has to come out of that account and go to activity accounts. Some of it comes out and goes to other budgeted line items for other fees like technology fees and things of that nature. So that's why you see a big credit in there this month that brought it down from about $500,000 down to $210,000. So our revenue in that, our revenue in that account is $210,000 out of $230,000. The
Okay.
$290,000 went to activity accounts and to other
Okay.
board accounts.
Did you
So that's
mention
why-
this at the last meeting, that something like that was gonna happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And I just, on the page 6, on the insurance, what is the expectation of that? When we look at budget amount and realized month to date, is this something that's monthly or as it happens on a, just as this money comes in, or do we see this as a kind of a rhythm or ebb and flow, or?
No, this is a number that's fairly constant from month to month. This month is like that, the $35,000 is much lower, obviously, if you look at the year-to-date, $902,000. It's
Yeah.
been running a couple $100,000 every month. This
Okay.
month, it just wasn't keyed in the month of November. So next month, you're gonna see a number that's probably gonna be up, $300,000 to $400,000, and it'll average it out for the first half of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Tim?
Yeah, I had sent them, Tim. Why are the levy percentages that we received not the same percentage in each of the funds? It's a couple of the funds, we got 89, first of all, we're at 42%.
What page you at?
I'm not at a specific page. Every levy for each fund, there's some that match and some that vary.
But it's
On the
not in-
revenue.
Is it in the budget or is it not?
It's in the revenue, here, I'll give you.
And you're saying the percentages compared to budget?
Yeah, we're at 42% of the school year right now, right?
Right.
After 5 months. If you look at, I'll give you the page, page 3 on line, the second line, we got 89% in the education fund. And then in the, we got 89% in the operation and maintenance. Did I skip one?
You got- okay.
Got 100% in transportation, we got 77% in debt service. I'm just trying to figure out, why do the percent realized vary between the funds? Does that mean we're getting less or more than what we asked for in certain funds?
When the treasurer's office receives the lump sum of all the taxes, then they split it up into these various accounts.
But I mean, when I get my tax bill, I'm told what to pay, and I don't say I'm not paying part of the transportation fund or whatever, I pay what it is.
Right.
I presume everybody does.
Right, but
So-
I don't think we get to cut up when the money's delivered to the treasurer's office. They then look at our levy and deposit that money accordingly. to our different levied accounts, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
So we might not have received all our tax dollars yet, but the goal should be.
That I understand, but I don't understand why the same percentage wasn't collected for each fund, since everybody's being billed on the same percentage for each fund.
Yeah, it may be just how it was budgeted in each fund versus
Okay.
how the levy was put together in each fund a year ago.
So it's not an indication there's gonna be a different relative collection on a fund when we get
No.
all the funds for the year?
No.
Okay. And then on page 4, on the general state aid, we're down $33,000 on, I don't know what line it is, I put the number when I sent it to you. On
Towards the bottom.
10301, the first line after the subtotal. I mean, based on 42% of the year, we're about 33,000 down from where we would have been if it's spread evenly, which is how we budgeted for it. Are we expecting to collect less than the state we budgeted for from the state for the general state aid there?
No, you actually get, you don't receive any general state aid in the month of July, so that
Okay.
kind of throws everything off.
Okay.
Um,
So we think we're gonna
terms of-
get what we budgeted for from general state aid right now?
Yes.
We're hoping.
We're hoping.
Well,
They were behind
yeah,
on
I mean,
payments last year.
From what the state has sent us about what we're entitled to and what they say they're gonna send us, yes, we will. Now, if something happens where they prorate it and they back off on that because of the financial situation of the state, then that's a different situation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Tim? All right, so thank you, Tim. Next thing is the Board of Education webpage.
We had this asked to be an agenda item, and I just wanted to briefly print out the 2 pages. One is from the Board of Education page, and the second is an example from the business page. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the board members wanted to discuss this item, and because their concern was that everything the board gets for meetings should just be on the board page. And we originally designed the new web page. We put the financial reports and the monthly bills and that stuff under the business office page, just aligning it with who produces those reports. So I guess it's just the pleasure of the board, or majority of the board, of how you want this set up. Those documents can easily be shifted over to the board page, so that it would include agenda, press packet minutes, monthly budget report, and monthly bills, all in one spot under the board. The second question, that's one question, and then the second question would be how far the board prefers to go back. Originally, I had asked Alicia to go back one fiscal year on top of what the current fiscal year we're in. So now remember, we do have some limited capacities with this web page. That's what the school district at the time last year when they were purchasing this. So all of these documents have to be scanned, and then we put them in as PDFs. So it's up to you how far back you want to go. Or what we can maybe try to do is some historicals where we just have the year and then people can click on it. I could check and see if that's a possibility. But I need some feedback today, and then we could have her work on that and then have her come back out to the board in January or February after we make some changes.
So what does the board feel? Gary, what would you feel comfortable how far back, financial-wise?
How far back we currently going right now?
One fiscal year
One fiscal year.
prior to the current fiscal year we're in. So we have 10, 11 up, all of 10, 11 up there, and then we have our meetings as we go on 11, 12.
Can't we put and then how far back do we have audited statements?
We go 3 years on that.
So
So
we
do you
have
wanna
available, that's
align-
because I thought we had more than that up there with the audited statements. So we have the audited statements out there.
Right, we haven't received this year's
Right,
audit, but
right,
once
I
we do,
understand,
we'll have
right.
3 years up there.
I think the audited statements are a good indicator. 3 years, maybe 5 years, I don't know. And then, to look at the details on a kind of on a monthly, is probably when you're back is probably sufficient. Because after that point, again, as we're seeing, as we're experiencing month to month, doesn't necessarily give a whole picture for the whole year. So I wouldn't be opposed to what we have up there now. Maybe extending back the
One more
audited ones
year.
a couple more years, yeah.
Mike?
I was the one who originally brought up to the board that I thought we should have our information, our meeting minutes, our agendas, our financial reports that were given, all in one place. Because if you get a question from someone in the community, my preference would be to say, go to the Board of Education page on the website, and then we have meetings. And within meetings, we have agendas, and we have things that we were giving at this meetings. The monthly budget report, the meeting minutes that we approved from the prior month's meetings. And I wanted it to go back as far as it could go, because it's all in one spot. Depending on what the limitations are, we could do something where you have, each monthly and a line item like it is now, and then we just take 12 months of open meeting minutes and make it one, and 12 months of open agendas, make it one, and something like that. You can condense it by combining the 12 agenda files or the 12 monthly meeting minutes that we approve and combine it into one line item. I'm not sure if Kevin, if the limitation is on space or number of line items on the page. And when I say space, is it the amount of space the files take on the website? So when I originally had this set up and brought it to the board, for the meetings, we would have the date, the type of meeting. We would have the agenda. As soon as the agenda's ready, post it out there so the public could take a look at it. And then we have a column called press packet. And as you know, for this particular meeting, we have a chunk of paper that we were all provided. And so if the public wanted to see the public items in that press packet, we have that press packet column. I also suggested we had two financial columns, one for the 1 or 2 or 3 page monthly budget report that has the overall type pictures, like Tim talked to us. He talked us through the revenues and the expenditures and the other things, and then another column with all the detail, such as the questions that Tim and Laura brought up on page 4, 6, and 3, so that they would be out there. And then we would have the meeting minutes that would be out there as soon as they were approved. My preference would be to have all of that information that we are given as a board under our board packet. And that was something I brought to the board, and I really didn't get any common input as to what you think we as a board should do. Right now, if we want to go and look at our packet and we want to go to the monthly budget report, we have to go somewhere else in the website that's not part of the Board of Education. So if someone in the public comes up to you and says, what are the levy numbers, or what are the revenue budget numbers, or what is the monthly, they talked about something in the monthly report, I would prefer to lead them to the Board of Education and lead them into the information we were given. And I thought that was a good way to keep all of the information that we're given, that the public gets to see all in one place. And that would include the paid bills. Back in, I think it was October of 2008, a gentleman came before the board and said, to show transparency and to show how the district is spending their monies, we should publish our paid bills, which we do in the consent agenda portion of the meeting, and we posted them on the website on the date of the meeting. So with those kind of criteria in mind, I was asking Kevin, by putting this on the agenda, if the board could come to some type of consensus, and not necessarily today, go back and think about it, as to what information you would like to have under the board tab as a board member, and then maybe we can come back at a committee meeting of the whole and talk about briefly what we'd like to decide as a whole as to what information should be out there under our board tab. I also talked to Kevin and said, we can also have the monthly budget report under the financial page. You just have the PDF file out there once, and you have 2 links to go to the same file, and they'll pull it up from whichever place you are on the website. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, and you're not necessarily taking up hard drive space to put that file out there twice. The file really will be out there only once, but it'll have 2 links. And I think this is a way to keep it all concisely filed so that you can go back in time. Like, there was a question about the levy, so I was pretty quick to go back to the agenda from last November and last December and go back to the meeting minutes to try to see what we did quickly. And so that's why I suggested we put it on the website and perhaps try to come to some consensus at a future meeting, not necessarily tonight, as to, you know, does this board want this information out there on the website, out there available to the public, and what general parameters would you like it filed under? I always thought financials, meetings, and policy were the 3 big items that we should have as a board. And as far as the press packet is concerned, I always thought that we should put it out there as soon as it's available, so that if people wanted to be watching this live, which Mr. Proch says we're getting a lot of hits on Tuesday nights when we broadcast this live, that they could go and hit the tab on the press packet and perhaps see some of the documents we're talking about. So those are some of the reasons I brought this up for the agenda. I didn't think that we try to tackle it tonight, but at least go back and think about it and see what you'd like to have under the board tab, and so that we can have easy access to the information we're given, which over the years, Dan, is a lot of boxes.
Well, listen, I applaud your one-stop shopping characteristic here of having a consolidation of information. This is a usable tool for us, as well as everybody else who wants to probe into our activities. And further, I would see this going back at least 3 years, because if you spot a trend, you want to analyze the trend to see what's working for you and what isn't working for you. So I would see this, the length and breadth of this, expanding to what you're proposing. The fact that you didn't get much discussion on your proposal, I don't think has. I think the absence of it means that we're on board with your proposal.
I think since I've been on the board, I have 6 boxes.
Yeah.
A stack of paper this high.
Well, listen, when I dig into this, I really like what you've done with the new the website, because it's a usable tool for me now.
And just a recent example.
I speak flyouts.
A recent example, we talked about the student population and projecting it out. And if we had 2 or 3 or 4 years of various types of information out there, we could easily go back and look to see what we did in 2010, what we did in 2009, what we projected down in 2000.
If you spot a trend, at least 3 years gives you usable data.
Okay, does everybody agree that we move it to the Cal meeting and then decide?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear anybody else's opinion?
Pardon me?
Do you want to hear the rest of our opinion? or-
Sure, no problem.
I think it's as much, historically, I'm not so sure if we need to go 3 or 5 years, or how much we have, because it's building it. But we need to make, especially, I agree with my current meeting, there's no reason it shouldn't be out there before the meeting. We have it, scanning the PDF and putting a document out there. The most important thing is, like Mike said, you could put in both places and put a link. I did send Kevin an email, Pam. I don't know if the search engine's working too well, because I searched, because I couldn't find some things, and I searched like on your name, and I got 2 hits. I searched on Kevin's, I got 2 hits.
Okay.
I can't believe you don't get 500 hits when I put your name in there. So something is maybe not working to get all the searches, but certainly current information should be there. The other thing we could do, like an audit report, is it's on the state website too. So you could put a link to their website so that people could look there if they want also. So I don't know how big your space capacity is, but I think the most important thing now is what Mike said. We should have the information about the next meeting on the website before the meeting, so people can see what we're talking about.
Okay, anybody else?
I think it's reasonable to find out what the average load is from, say, 6 months of meetings, and what it's going to cost if we have to buy more space. so we can make that decision.
We did, it's funny you bring that up, because the reason the last, what was it, the last board agenda, Mary Ann? The last board packet that did not get up because it was over the 25 megs or the 45 megs that they allow us to send as a
Right.
electronic document, so we had to save it to an external and do like a FileZilla and compress it, so.
FTP kind
Right.
of thing? Yeah.
And so for tonight's meeting, we do have the agenda out there, and we do have a press packet out there that is 90 pages. So there's 90 pages available out there that would contain the public portion of our meeting tonight.
So the thing I'm hearing from everybody is, do you want us to try to put this on one page so that everything you see in the agenda, the bills, the minutes, the reports, are under the board page? Or do you prefer that it be under the 2 separate pages that it currently is?
I think let people think about it and then come back and we'll talk about it.
Yep.
I think one thing though, Pam, we should look at is on this website, because our press packet is big, how we can avoid that, or, you know what I mean? If we need more server space, what does that cost, you know, stuff like that. So.
The other limitation that we will need addressed, that Pam and I are working on right now, is we will have to look at some staffing issues in regards to this, not only for next semester, but for next year, because we really only aligned a .1 for the webmaster. And when we're trying to keep this transparency and sending this many documents and sending the press releases as well as the other stuff that's coming from the different departments in the building, we realize that we're running out of personnel time. So the immediacy of that being posted is not, you know, it's not possible sometimes. You know, we'll send something, you know, if Mary Ann and I are working on something on a Friday, that might not get up till Monday or Tuesday. You know, if we send it right before we leave, and that's just the nature of what we're dealing with. So I'm looking at that right now. If I think it's going to be an additional expenditure to the board, I will let you know that at next month. Or this might be something that we correct going forward for next year as we budget and start the budget process.